Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here. Thanks to the to do digital program plus the guys from Dream Factory Foundation for asking me to take part in this and speak to you guys. Obviously when this was brought up, I was asked to speak based on my background, things that I do, what I'm associated with, and things like that. And as you've seen, the topic for today is raising capital from an investor's perspective. So I think my introduction will give you the perspective that explains why I've been asked to come and speak today. And while we're also touching on this idea of what investors tend to look for, I'm just going to touch on two examples of something that was also said. It's good just to touch on an area that focuses on gap, or opportunity identification. And before we get into the whole session and everything, I'll just introduce myself, as our viewers mentioned that I requested that I do. Okay, so I'm a 33-year-old individual, born and raised in Zimbabwe, and I've been living in Botswana for the last 11 years. So I'm a businessman, small scale farmer, and the businesses that I normally work with are either businesses in the manufacturing sector, or the ones that actually then support, manufacturing services and things like that. I'm also occasionally a mentor. I'm a newbie in the investment space, newbie in the sense that I've only been in this probably about 2 years now. And then I'm a board member of the Angel Network Botswana. I'm also a board member of the FinTech Association of Botswana. So this association is currently in formation at this particular point in time. And then I'm an advisory board member in about 1 or 2 manufacturing organizations. Last but not least, I am a family man as well. So we'll just tail into everything with regards to what I'm just here to just speak to you guys about as well today. One thing I do encourage is at any point in time, if you feel I'm speaking too quickly, I've been told I speak very quickly. For one, if also you feel that you want to ask a question or request some clarity, please feel free to chime in. I think normally the etiquette for Zoom is, I'm not sure if it's a hand that goes up or something along those lines. I just can't remember. And then you can just chime in and then ask whatever it is you want to ask. And then so at least we try and have it as interactive as possible as well, and things like that. Anyway, so where I'll just kick off now is looking at the idea of, in brief, the idea of, gap opportunity spotting. And I'll give it using two examples. These 2 examples are actually existing businesses. So depending where you are in the sphere, you might know some of these businesses or have heard of them or seen social media adverts and things like that. So the first business is called RavTech. So it's one of my businesses that I'm involved in. So this is RavTech Solutions. RavTech Solutions is a batch printing organization. It's a business that basically sells batch printers. So if you are in manufacturing, or whether you bought a Kit Kat, Coke, milk, medicine, or whatever it is, you'll tend to notice a best before date, an expiry date, and a batch date printed on these products. So our machines, specialized machines, do that printing process. So basically, the idea of me talking about this, it also resonates. It starts to speak towards the ideas of applying for funding, the things that angels want to see or understand or pick up from your projects and pitches and things like that. So I got this, how I got to identify this opportunity was through a colleague of mine, a former colleague, came up to me one time, about 6-7 years ago, told me about this batch coding process, something I didn't understand. And later on, I decided, you know what, let's just do some research in the Botswana market, get to understand also what this entails. Discovered that there was only one lady who was, a local supplier. Everybody else was using machinery, was getting service from either South Africa, Zimbabwe, India, China, and all that jazz. Long and short of it, spent about 6 months like this, as I mentioned, researching to discover if there's actually potential in this particular project. In that 6 month period, I was fortunate to discover one of the biggest suppliers in South Africa. And we had a meeting with the founder of one of the biggest printing supply companies in SA. And, a few promises later, one or two meetings in Joburg, a few promises later, we set up a business. And that's the legacy that set up this particular organization since then. The the main thing that you'll get from this is this opportunity was not spotted or found on the basis of me actively looking for it. Someone sat in a room with me, you sat at a bar, you maybe over drinks, discussed something, and voila, an opportunity presented itself. But the key thing that was done there was I spent time researching this particular opportunity to ensure that I'm actually very ready in terms of what I need to be able to deliver this. The second example I'll give you, I think people might be a bit more familiar with this organization, especially the guys from Botswana. If you know a company called Organic Natural Skincare, it's run by a lady called Didi Didintle. So this company specializes in organic products for the skin. So your soaps, serums, toners, moisturizers, etc. I think when our viewers sent me the list of everybody who's part of the program, I did notice a person or two who's involved in the sectors that are to do with skincare and things like that. So she's somebody who some of you guys might be interested in actually at some point meeting, discussing, and potentially benchmarking with over time with the direction she's taking. Anyway, so Didi identifies how Didi then, so Didi's story, long and short of it, is as a teenager, she struggled with acne. And then she couldn't find products in Botswana that could help her basically relieve her skincare issues and things like that. At this particular moment, she, post high school, as she's in university, she decides maybe I can actually make my own skincare products. So this is how she basically discovered this opportunity. But for her to take it into action again, so she's taken, I think this was maybe 3-4 years ago, and she really set this company up 2 years ago. So you can imagine she spent 2 years of research time in order to really understand what she then needs to do, to know how to work and all these things in order to be able to start producing all these soaps and serums, from natural products that we find, like, for example, in Botswana, your morula, and things like that. So the main aim of this whole story basically just says, at the end of the day, the method in terms of how I discovered a business that's given me the opportunities that I've gotten over the last 5-6 years is that it was an opportunity by chance. It was purely luck and good timing that came to me. At the same time, the main thing that featured was research and just knowledge of what you're getting into. Likewise, on Didi's end as well, she's not spent 1 month, 1 week, or a day thinking about something. She spent a year to 2 in depth, researching, really trying to understand what she needs to do in order to be able to start setting up a business. And then what I just want to hear from anybody, obviously everyone here is in business. What experiences do you have, or are you willing to share how you identified the opportunity that's allowed you to set up the business that you have now? Anybody who's keen just to share their 2 cents? I don't know. I think you can just unmute a mic and shoot in, possibly, if anyone's keen. No takers?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Sam. I can also hear you, and I see Eva's hand is up as well. So I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
So can I go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what?
All right. Can you repeat your last question, the one that you were asking?
So I was saying, is anybody willing just to share? Everyone is in business. Is anyone willing to share basically how they discovered their opportunity? Was it something that i.e. you're moving around somewhere, you saw an idea, did someone feed you some information, little things like that, just to get a general sense of how or what made you, what influenced the decision to.
All right. So it was I was in Baisa, I was studying as a student here in Botswana. So I was into graphic design. So I'm a very passionate person when it comes to graphic design. So one day as I was walking to school, I met these guys and they were like designing the front of a car. So these guys, they made this car very nice. And then when I returned from school, now I was asking myself, these guys now have painted this car and this car is looking good. So then I just stood there. So one of the guy notices me that this guy has an interest, maybe he's a customer or something. Then he comes to me across the road and asks me, hey, what's up, man? What are you doing here? Can we help you with something? And I was like, guys, when I passed here, this thing was a different thing. Now I can actually see that this is a car that it's a well-known car, but now it has changed. So what have you done, guys? Can you teach me something? I can pay you. So this is how I had interest into spray painting. So these guys, then they decided to like give me a shot. Then I learned how to spray paint from those guys. Then as I was doing my last level for computer engineering, so then I decided to start this business of panel beating and spray painting. So this is how I got an interest into doing this business. So I just got this by just like having a site, by just looking at that. That's what triggered me into like investing into this business that I'm running today. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can hear you.
we can hear you. I think we lost Fred.
Huh?
I think we lost Fred, maybe due to connectivity or something.
Okay. This is how I got into this business. It's through seeing it from someone. Okay, I'm done.
All right.
Yeah, this is how I started my business.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good to hear this. We've, like I was saying earlier, you find opportunities in anything and everything in your everyday. So this is another unique way that you've discovered, a skill, a talent, and opportunity for you to venture into business.
Yes.
Eva, you care to share yours briefly as well?
Oh yes. Thank you. I was saying that if with mine, it was also during my first days in my career as a professional social worker. So I was looking. I had a client who wanted to adopt. So I was looking for somebody who is privately practicing, who could give advice and also support throughout the process of adoption. And then there was no one. And this person was also willing to pay for the service. So I couldn't find anyone who was offering that. Governments on the other side were offering free advice, but they will not assist. They were just explaining the process, but not doing the other things. So I identified this gap, and then I registered a business of which I started offering those services. I had about 2-3 clients at the beginning of that, some who were locals and some who were foreigners. So I was offering adoption advice. That was 3 years down into my career as a social worker. So I was also assisting them with report compilation, because assessments needed to be carried out at their houses. So I was doing that. And then with that, I was also getting remuneration for offering that particular service. That's how I started with my consultancy now, of which I've introduced other aspects such as research, and then also designing programs and grant writing, mostly for nonprofit making organizations. This is where I am right now.
Okay. All right. Very interesting story. I like this. All right. Okay, guys. So what I'll do now is I'll get into the crux of today's session. I've basically been asked to speak to you guys about what an investor wants to see, long and short of it. So the way I'm going to really speak, I'm speaking mostly, as a member of A and B. The idea being, I can't speak for other angel networks, in either in South Africa, across the region, things like that. Obviously, our balance sheets differ, our risk appetites as well do differ, although we tend to fish from, similar ponds in terms of what we are trying to actually gather from, business that we invest in or want to invest in. Okay, so ideally, I was just mapping this, over the last few days, just to see what we tend to look for, from all the sessions that we've gone to, pitches I've watched, and things like that, and the companies that have also been invested in. And I really came up with 6 things from this. So the first thing is traction. Sorry, I've got my notes here, so I'll look down from time to time. So the first thing is traction. The second thing is the owner or the founder. The third thing is the team. And then I'll try and give examples here and there where I can. The fourth thing is obviously the concept. And then the fifth thing is growth potential. And then the last thing is financials. And then I'll touch in, just as a 7th tip, some of the things that occur after you've finished, getting through pitches and this interest, and some of the things that actually happen that make or break, your investment, to ensure that you get investment from individuals and things like that. So, for example, so we start with the first section that speaks to traction. I'd like to believe that everybody here is currently in business, operating one way or the other. Am I wrong to assume that, or are there people who are still in development stage? They don't have clients yet and things like that.
You're correct to assume that, sir.
Okay. All right. So the whole idea is, when you go to an investor and you request funding, it's very different from, I think in Botswana, we have things like your YDF, so your Youth Development Fund. And then in Botswana and SA, we've both got CEDA and, other parastatal type of organizations that offer funds. Some of these organizations will take and will actually fund your concepts based on, an idea or a business plan that hasn't been proven. So angels would generally want a proof of concept, because as much as someone has the drive to build an economy, is willing to risk their capital, they also want to minimize the potential risk of loss of that capital, and really want to see it benefiting people. So the main issue there is, whatever business idea that you have, the main thing is you need to prove that, listen, you've tested it in the market somewhere, you've got customers, you've got market share, you've got repeat customers, or customers that you retain, and little things like that. At least that shows or provides some surety for investors. And then the next section looks at you as a founder. So all of you here today are, again, I'll assume, are founders of all your businesses, not somebody who's, employed by a business, who's been asked to represent a business here, but you're all founders of your businesses. So the idea of a founder and a angel coming together, it's not just about I have a big fat check, that I can sign, or you have this wow business that that everyone is trying to invest in. There always has to be an investor and an investor founder fit as side number one. Further to that, you yourself as a founder, it's always good to discover yourself, as this particular founder. So when I invest personally, let me maybe use a personal experience. So when I invest in a business, I tend to lean towards manufacturing, just as an FYI. It's not just about the product the person is making or other things that surround the business. It's how I relate to the person, how I understand, whether it's their journey, how I feel, the gut feeling I have about the person. It's almost like a sales like a sales transaction or whatever it is. The whole idea is people don't invest in the company, they invest in you. That's how we look at it. So at the same time, as a founder, why I said you need to introspect. The idea is we want to see whether you've identified all your own limitations and all your own strengths. So obviously your strengths, you push them as much as possible to your benefit. Your limitations, then you look at them and say, listen, if I'm unable to do X, Y, Z, I think mostly the technically based founders tend to struggle, for example, with administration and financial related matters and decisions. So you find that there's possibly a need for a co-founder based on your limitations, unless you're able to learn new skills and then apply yourself somewhere else. And then thirdly, as I mentioned, is the team. So obviously as a founder, you can't do everything. So the team is very, very important. I'll shoot into a brief example. I think during our first days as Angel Network Botswana, which is about two and a half years ago, during a pitch session, we had a young lady come up. She's a manufacturer locally, and she knew all her stuff, from whether it's chemical composition, you name it. She really knew her pitch, her concept, and everything. During the pitch, she invited somebody who was more or less, she termed him the CEO of the business. And this guy came, on stage, hands crossed across his chest. He's supposed to be presenting. He was underdressed for the event, compared to his co-presenter at the time. And when asked questions, he was very cagey. He gave short answers. And the long and short of it is, I was sitting on a panel of about 20 angels in Botswana, and there was interest in her product, but there was no investment because in the end, there was no belief in her team. So it's important that the team that you have around you is technically capable and they give a good representation of the business. So even such that if you're not there, you're assured that they will, they'll be able to, speak to whether it's customers or whatever it is properly about the product. The other side then speaks about the concept. I think that's pretty straightforward. Look, the main thing is in any pitch deck, you're showing us what are you trying to solve? How is it better than others? And then how are you planning on solving this particular issue? By how are you solving this? I'm looking at the process of me getting this service. If you're creating an application, how easy is it for me to get the service? Is it very complicated? Are there too many forms? Are there too many links for me to click? If it's a service, Sam's mentioned where he's doing panel beating. When I come to you and from insurance and I say to you, listen, I need 3 quotations. Are you going to tell me, here's mine, go find others around to give the job, or can you assist me? How do you make my life easier, as the potential customer, using your service and things like that? So that sits all under the concept. Then the 6th thing, which is a very, very big thing, is growth potential. Again, I'll just give you an example using organic natural skincare in terms of when we met Didi at the beginning and where she is today. So the whole idea is my job as an investor, let's say someone pitches to me today. I'm going to look and see in terms of my experience, my funds, my network, how can I best help your business grow? Yes, I might poke ideas here and there to try and help better the idea, but at the same time, I need to be able to envision how my asset base can better your business. So if I go back to the example in terms of organic natural skincare, we met Didi in 2019, I think November, during a demo day and things like that. So at the time when we met her, she had a good product because we all realized that there was a need for organic products, for skincare and things like that in Botswana. She had limited access to market at the time, and then her product design in terms of outlook, the branding on the boxes and everything was not, it wasn't attractive. It was very, very busy and not bright, if I can, for lack of a better word. And she also needed, a bit of advisory and mentoring and things like that. So the long and short of it, three angels, so myself, the chairman of our network, and another gentleman called Aditya, sat down and decided to mentor her for an entire year. So throughout this mentoring process, I think the guys in Botswana who might be familiar with this product will see where she's come from and where she is today. So in this mentoring, immediately she got access to distribution, a distribution market. So i.e., we knew an owner of a distribution company. So I think you guys will know how Tiger Brands makes food, but it doesn't go from Tiger Brands straight into the supermarket. It goes from Tiger Brands to a distributor. The distributor moves it across all the country and puts things into Spar, Pick and Pay, and all that jazz for us to buy. And it's really hard to list by yourself without this distributor and to get either access or network or transport and things like that. So the first thing she benefited through this mentorship process, because we had seen growth potential, was distribution. Thereafter, she benefited from short-term trade finance. So she's getting funded this year, but she spent a year, like I said, in a mentoring process throughout the COVID lockdowns of 2020. And we were giving her short-term interest-free loans to help her meet demand in terms of supplying this and that while she's still growing her business. On top of that, she also went and she was learning things to do with market and product packaging in terms of how things should look, and little things like that. And then, so long and short of it now is she's at a point where she's done her demo day. She's currently undergoing a few processes under the network, and potentially she will actually be funded to the tune of what she's requested during her pitch. The last and most important thing is what is a realistic valuation, and also knowing what you want. So if someone picks up, someone sends me a LinkedIn message and says, hi, I think we get all these messages on Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Someone says, hi, you greet back, hello. And then after that, there's barely any conversation that occurs, but someone is looking for assistance, whether it's funding, advice, or whatever it is. So this speaks to, knowing what you want. So the first thing, when you speak about realistic valuations, if you're going to come to an angel investor and tell them your business has been operating for 6 months and you have 10 customers and you have revenue of less than 50,000 and you've not retained a single one of your customers, and you come to us and you say, listen, guys, I want 500,000 pula or rands, and I value my business at 5 million pula. The odds are that that pitch will be just pushed aside, because the valuation, there's nothing that's supporting this valuation. So the main idea, and what I'm getting at with this, is that before you come up to a group of individuals and speak to them about in terms of how much you want, for one, and how much you're willing to offer within your business, or what you're willing to offer. Take time, sit down with an accountant, or sit down with someone who would have a bit of investment or finance knowledge, just to understand how you do valuations and little things like that. It will better position you at the time when you actually come to angels and let them know, listen, guys, I want XYZ amount of money. I want to do this with that money, and I'm valuing my business at this particular amount based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons. So it's very important that all of it dials down to research. I mean, as a practical example, I think we got I think it was 2 months ago, in Botswana, we got a request for 100. Someone said we've got 100 million pula concept, and they're asking for a 1 million pula initial capital, obviously for 1% of this particular business. And when at face value, the idea to me looked intriguing, because I felt there was value in what they're offering. But when you start looking at the rest of the documentation, there's no traction. There's very inflated numbers in terms of how they are in terms of user acquisition and little things like that. So straight away, an entire group of angels said this concept is it's a waste of time until we see, an actual something running on the ground. Maybe we can consider it. These guys want to use more capital to try and prove the concept. We don't fund. Generally, most angels don't fund ideas. In that light. And then when you speak to things like knowing what you want. So as I mentioned before, the whole idea is when you come and speak to an angel or you pitch to a panel, straight away, cover your bases and, have working knowledge of certain things. So if it's a valuation issue and, as, what do you call this? As entrepreneurs, we normally fear the idea that if I sell off, if I get investment from somewhere, I'm going to lose control of my company, little things like that. You start researching things like convertible notes, safes, although safes in Africa are not yet like a big thing. And I think in Botswana, the legislation doesn't cover that. You look at getting debt, obviously with lower interest rates from angels. You look at things like strictly mentorship to say, listen, guys, I don't want money at this particular point in time. I need to learn. So I'd like someone to mentor me. So, there's things like that. In some cases, you just want access to market. You want somebody who's, that there's an angel in distribution, or there's an angel in finance, and you want access to a particular element of the market through that angel networks. So know exactly what you're asking for. In some cases, you want to be added to a value chain. Let's say, I'll use Sam as another example again. So if Sam is currently, he's panel beating vehicles, so he might sit down and say, listen, he's met an angel who maybe runs an insurance business, whatever it is, and then he wants to work with him as his primary choice of or company of panel beating, or you want to work with an angel who owns what do you call this, a vehicle company or whatever it is, and then you become their primary link, for small odd jobs, fixing of high-end cars and little things like that. So someone can plug you into the value chain without actually necessarily giving you money. But the business flow that you'll get from that will gain you quite a bit of capital. So the whole idea now is that, in a nutshell, when you apply for funding from most angel networks, inclusive of A and B, you'll go through five steps. So just to let you guys know what these 5 steps are. And then the last thing I said I'll speak about that makes or breaks whether you'll be invested in or not. I'll just cover that right at the end. So the first section is obviously when you come in contact with the angels of the group, where you apply, to be considered for pitching and whatnot. Thereafter, you come in and you pitch. So that's step number 1. After that's happened, if people are interested, you get into a series of negotiations. And then details also about the investment in terms of further investigation between yourself and the angel team. So sometimes the angels invest by themselves, or they use investment vehicles called SPVs or syndicates, where they just come together and then as a group and then invest. Instead of having 10 shareholders in your company, you just have one company or organization coming together. And things like term sheets and stuff like that. That's normally your second section. The third section, which as I mentioned, I'll break down a bit, is where most businesses tend to fail and then fail to get investment because they can't get through this process. This process is called due diligence. I'd like to think that most people are aware or have heard of some of this terminology. So the due diligence is basically conducted by investors, or as in the case of A&B, we have an external company that we as the angels pay for the service, and they come and do a due diligence on the business we're investing in to ensure that everything is kosher within the business. Thereafter, the fourth section, when that DD report comes, we assess it, and then we do final negotiations based on the reports, and then thereafter all legal matters are covered. So in terms of signing of documents, transferring of funds, and things like that. So the main thing now with due diligence, I think it's an important area to cover because a lot of guys get surprises when you get to the DD phase of things. So a DD, for those who might not know, it takes between 30 to 60 days. It covers, the basic ones cover commercial, legal, financial, and tax. So if I'm to invest in a company, I want to know its market position thoroughly in terms of numeric investigation. I want to know the actual market share this company has, potential sales forecasts according to an expert versus what you've presented, even brand value, because all that has money. And then from a legal perspective, have you incorporated your company correctly? Are there any contractual obligations that your business has or is tied to? What assets do you have, and what's the ownership status of assets? Some companies, I think, the guys in bots would know the choppy scandal that came up at some point where some of the assets were not actually owned by the shop or the brand. They were owned by different people. So the valuation of the company was a bit inflated, and there was a whole debacle there. So dudes would normally pick such things up and either red flag it to say, listen, not investable, and things like that. It looks at compliance matters. So if you are producing a food product, have you gone through all the necessary testing in that region, that country? If we export it to certain areas as well, do you have the approvals and all that necessary stuff? It also looks at, so the long and short of it from legal, if your company has issues, it affects the value of this business. So it's trying to protect the interest of the investor in the long run. And then the financial, I think that speaks for itself. It looks at valuation assumptions, historical performance data. So if you guys spend time buying, swiping with company cards, go Nando's, and the liquor bars and everything, these things do come up in these statements because you submit, financial records, and this is also a red flag because you can't be trusted with large amounts of money. Then also it looks at any financial uncertainties that you as an entrepreneur might not have foreseen. Like if you're supplying into a politically unstable country, or you're supplying using a currency that's unstable in some areas, currency fluctuations, whatever it is. The DD generally covers these things. And then the last thing would be tax. So, tax compliance, corruption is rife in Africa. So people dodge some of these things all the time. In some cases, just because we don't know, we pay the wrong taxes, and then we create liabilities. So, you don't want to invest $1 million into a business and then later discover that, no, actually for 10 years, they've not been paying the correct tax, and we need to drop another $500,000. We're now partners and little things like that. So in a nutshell, I think when you're trying to raise finance, those are the six or seven main things I've mentioned that need to be reflected in any document. And the reason why at the beginning I spoke about the opportunity identifying thing, and I was stressing the idea of research, is that all this is not possible without actually researching and spending time really understanding as much as you can about your business. The only thing I would want to find out now is, have any of you pitched to any investors before, whether it's angel or family or any with your business? If you've pitched, how did it go? And did you get the funding? What transpired and things like that? If anybody's just willing to go, maybe just one person, because I'm looking at time as well, so that it doesn't creep in too much. Okay, Sikamo says, I haven't pitched as yet. Okay, so at least two people have said they haven't pitched. So look, guys, the Angel Network Botswana is open to individuals pitching. We're always looking for wow concepts. I'll just put it out there, whether in Botswana, South Africa, even anywhere in Africa, we are open to investing. If anybody's keen, at a later stage, I can always share, or I can ask our viewer to share the application links if you want to be considered for potential, demo day time and things like that. I think at this particular point, I don't have much else to really add on, and I'd be interested to take any questions that anybody might have. Obviously, there's a whole lot I didn't cover, and if anybody just wants to ask anything that you want to know, this is the time that you can you can throw them in. I'm seeing a question that's coming on the chat from Katako here. About is investing in another organic skincare product a conflict of interest for you? If not, okay, it would depend. I would need to see a bit more of your product to see your line, Katako. Is it the same as DD's product? I just need to see. The main things for me now is the potential for your product, what I'd be looking to see. I have a full understanding that organic products are in demand in the market and will be in demand for a very long time. It would just be for us to actually have a bit of a one-on-one conversation, and I really see and unpack more of your business and see what you're about, and then we can have a full-on discussion about that from there.
There's another question from Sam. He's saying, when pitching, is it always important to bring your team, or is it optional?
It's not important to bring your team unless, okay, let me put it this way. It's not important to bring your team unless when a team member in their pitching, they're actually going to contribute something of value. But otherwise, if you can, clearly articulate what it is that your pitching team, your team, what your team members do, what the experience is, what they bring to the table, and little things like that, it's generally good enough for the investor. I think the only time, like I said earlier, someone who's technical, especially the guys who are more technical, coders, guys into engineering and things like that, tend to not be able to speak or express themselves very, very well, but they know the technical elements of the business. But they'll have somebody who's working with them who's able to speak very, very well, for example. So those two coming together would be beneficial, because someone would speak, introduce the topic, really get the investors focused on what's happening, and then the more technical person would come in and explain, the nitty-gritties of whatever it is that they are requesting you to invest in, and then the other individual continues from there. So as long as they can bring value, bring them along. If they can't bring value, then there's no need.
Is there anyone else with a question? They'd like a follow-up question? Maybe you can unmute your mic, or you can hit up in the bar.
Greetings, Fred. I think I'll just shoot. Thank you so much for such valuable knowledge. Would you suggest, maybe it's better, because I think the one thing that I've noticed from what you're saying, that a lot of SMEs, they go for the money, like they just think about, I want investor for money, and they don't really take note about that. It could literally, what you need is introduction to a value chain, and that will obviously lead to money. And I think what you said was so valuable, and I think it's just maybe the lack of knowledge to understand, also to be clear, what exactly do you need? Yes, obviously everything is for money, but there's something that you need that you're maybe not able to really articulate very well. And do you think that SMEs, that it's much more better? I know I've heard this thing of, like, especially for the NPO space, if you're meeting a potential investor, it's always maybe kosher to rather speak about everything else but the money. Speak about your impact, speak about what you do, and and let the conversation about money not necessarily be the one that you speak about the most, because obviously everyone knows that ideally it is about money. So would you advise that as SMEs to rather ask, we have a greater chance of asking for the other things rather than just straight ahead asking for the money, specifically if we're really not clued up exactly as to how much money we will need? Because I feel like maybe asking for money leads to even more tougher questions that might not be ready to answer. What is your take about what to ask for first?
Okay, so look, so the idea here is that it's not always to say don't ask for money. You need to find a balance, in my opinion. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm looking for 1 million pula, I'm going to give you a look, because there's no other bit of value that you've shown me that, would ensure that I have a desire probably to say to continue interacting. So you just have to find balance. So obviously showing value, value in terms of whether it's who you are, what you're about, or whatever it is. Somewhere, somehow in that conversation, if there is a need for money, it needs to reveal itself. So even if you show me value for the next 5 minutes and I'm wowed by your presentation in terms of a business concept or whatever it is, at some point you will need to slide that issue in to say, listen, excuse me, the investment or the idea that I need or whatever it is, I need 500,000 pula or rand, or I need 100,000 rand or whatever it is, because it also, you don't want the surprise later where I show massive interest in something, and then after chatting, back and forth emails or whatever it is over 2-3 weeks, you come to me with a figure that I'm like, oh, this I can't. It's beyond me. So you just have to find a balance, and I can't tell you when is the right time to start with a figure, but I can say that show value, and somehow find the right moment to slip the figures in as well.